So we can do 3
All right, perfect. Thank you all. Welcome to the council, special meeting of council of May 7th, 2026 at 7 p.m. I can confirm we have quorum. The mayor and council wish to acknowledge that the town of Fort Smith is located within Treaty 8 territory. Treaty 8 territory also encompasses the traditional homelands of Salt River First Nations, Tabadessa Denisuthlane Nation, and Indigenous Métis people of Fort Smith. These nations have maintained stewardship of the sacred lands and throughout the generations, and we honor your knowledge, teachings, traditions, and the land. We're mindful that colonization has not been kind, and we respectfully recognize our generational histories and commit to strive for unity in the spirit of truth and reconciliation. All right, if I can have someone adopt the agenda.
I move we adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Second?
Sure.
Councillor Cox. All in favor? All right. Pass unanimously. Sorry, my phone's not working. All right, so yeah, I got another one. In our agenda, we have our briefing notes on the mill rate and bylaw 1084. If I could have someone, read it out as it is, but if we, once we select the scenario, we can amend it after, okay? So if I can have someone move the mill rate bylaw?
I'll move that council select the mill rate calculation and associated property class weighting to be used in preparation of the 2026 mill rate bylaw number 1084.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Pruitt. All right, folks, so I'm gonna open it up for discussion. Did administration want to speak to the briefing note and the weighting factors? For sure.
I'm going to steer this to our community services director, and if she wants to have an introduction and possibly answer any questions. If you have other questions that I may be able to answer, I'll take a look at.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay.
All right, Director.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, just to walk through how the numbers were slotted into these calculations, the way that the calculations were applied, and just addressing, excuse me, a couple of points of misalignment that were identified in review of this document today, and settle those misalignments to make sure everybody's on the same page. So, in January, Council approved adopting the 2026 operating budget, expenditures totaling just over $14 million. The revenues fell just slightly short of that, to the tune of about $150,000, which created a need for increased taxation. At the same time, in a concurrent process, we were undergoing the general assessment, a 10-year reassessment of all properties in the territory undertaken by MACA. It's a very prescriptive process and affected property assessment values to an enormous degree. At the time, members of the community found this pretty alarming. We enacted a bunch of messaging to that effect, and things seemed to be okay. We did have a convention of the Board of Revisions to address 2 applications for potential revision of assessment values. Both applications were found to not require any change in the end, so Board of Revisions was adjourned without modifying any of the assessment values in the community. So, with the need for an increased taxation amount, and knowing that the Board of Revisions has now settled and all assessment values are set, we can start to approach these calculations. So, we know how much we needed to enact an increase of taxation, $150,000. Slightly over that. However, in order to calculate the mill rate, you need to address the entire taxation requirement. Now, this was something that I think I was mis-explaining when I was walking through this document earlier, so I'll try to be sort of more forthcoming about the details. When approaching the holistic taxation amount, the grants in lieu of taxes are considered to be taxation revenue. So when you're talking about gross taxation requirements and the gross reflection of mill rate, if you include the grants in lieu of taxes, that does show you what the taxation amount and necessary assessment value would affect the mill rate, and how that mill rate would be borne out if we did not receive those grants in lieu. Now, while the grants in lieu of taxes have been a very dependable source of tax income in lieu of properties where taxation may be exempt for whatever reason, or in cases like NGOs and things where taxation isn't applicable just due to legislative restriction in that way. In my opinion, as Director of Corporate Services, it's important to know that gross mill rate amount, especially with the world changing to the degree that it is all the time and things not being quite so guaranteed as they have been in the past. We know that, our peers in the Parks Department are experiencing, the eve of a bunch of cuts. So that needs to be something that we need to be aware of, even if we aren't going to enact it at this time. So the gross amount was included in here. And what that gross amount is borne out of is the amount that we need for expenses to be paid, plus that grants in lieu taxes amount, plus the amount that we need that we didn't meet with revenue to expense for the budget, okay? So it's the amount that we identified in the taxation line, plus the grant in lieu amount, right below the taxation line, plus the amount that we found when we presented the 2026 budget as being a shortfall from revenues, so that this equals the entire amount that needs to be covered by tax revenue in 2026. Now again, this is a gross representation of this amount. Under the net representation, you would not include the grants in lieu taxes because they are a very special applicable line toward assessment values and towards the taxation process. And like I said, they are not a guaranteed inclusion in this whole process, and it is important to note the difference in the gross and net amounts so that you can have reserve preparedness, you can have discussions about risk management, things like that, stuff that should be kept in view and an awareness that should be maintained even if we aren't going to enact it, and we don't need to express any kind of needs awareness or any kind of implication in any other lines to make sure that the gross needs are met at this time. It's a good thing to know for planning if nothing else. With this in mind, the gross mill rate amount, it's sort of colloquially put into a percent. If you like to not have it a percent, 0.02. When you remove the grants in lieu taxes value, you land at 1.23%, which is what then gets applied to the different mill rate scenarios. Again, the 1.23% is born out of a net realization of this calculation, and in years to come, in the horrible event that we aren't in receipt of grants in lieu taxes anymore, because it is a pretty significant value, nearly $2 million out of our budget, that amount would instead be 2.08. With all that in mind, proceeding with the 1.23 mill rate value, the scenario analyses that were followed, scenario number 1 applies the same weight metrics that were used in 2025. It's a pretty middle ground approach. It makes things a little bit lighter on the residential properties. It's the usual sort of standardized approach where commercial entities would pay a bit more, residential pay a bit less, but it's a pretty sort of equalized and not too much weight applied in any one direction that is felt to be unnecessarily burdensome. I don't know if this is the time or if I should wait till the end, but if I was to provide a recommendation, I would say that scenario number 1, maintaining the status quo, would probably be the most palatable for the municipality. It is an implication of weighting towards the mill rate value that was provided to members of the committee last year. My understanding it was also followed with some pretty thorough messaging to explain the approach then as well. So I think that if we maintained that approach, revisited some of that language from last year, we would have a very sort of consumable, approachable mill rate that, alongside of the big assessment year we had, wouldn't create quite the scenario of perhaps confusion or misunderstanding or potentially sticker shock that we may see if we were to change the weights, like I said, at a time when we've already been experiencing quite a bit of volatility with regard to property assessment values and things. But in the event that council wishes to enact an alternative approach, a couple of different scenarios here to check. Scenario number 2 increases the taxation burden on industry, institution, and telecoms, and lightens the expectation on residential payments. It has the potential to alienate some members of these industries if they find that it's distasteful to them to continue to bear an enhanced burden of taxation. However, I wouldn't like to speak on the part of any of those institutions, but I do know that it has been reflected in recent meetings by personnel from, as an example, Aurora, that increasing expenses are not something they'd love to see. So I'll just say that in terms of looking at increases specifically towards more commercial entities. And then for scenario number 3, it is an extremely equitable, sort of very squarely middle ground approach. It's 50-50 all around. Everybody gets their fair share. This in other municipalities has been found to be not wholly accepted by residential members of the community. They find that it is an unfair burden to place the same expectation of taxation value on them as on bigger entities who have far greater cash flows available. And then scenario 4 would provide the greatest relief to residential members of the community. But again, you do risk alienating some members on the commercial side who may find it to be a little bit alienating in the municipal landscape to have to bear a quite enhanced taxation burden. I think that covers most things. If anybody has any questions or if I can provide any further clarification, I'd be happy to do so.
Awesome, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, Councillor Couvette.
Just for clarity, I'm assuming all 4 scenarios presented generate the necessary revenues to meet our 2026 budget requirements.
That's right. Each scenario, while there is a different weight expression and different changes in the taxation values that would be applied, the outcomes of all land back at the required taxation revenue generated.
Awesome, thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Just because I'm not a mathematician, all the columns with negatives in front of them. I heard the little discussion going on here before we started. Can you explain to me, like, what if I'm reading this as a taxpayer, that doesn't mean your taxes are going down $948?
Yeah, so with the general assessment and the property values increasing to such an enormous degree, and I'll call to mind the fact that there was a town hall and the fire hall everywhere, we were getting a pretty enormous amount of calls from people saying, oh my gosh, my property taxes are going to go through the roof, my property assessment value is bonkers. And we were able to talk people through those issues. We were able to sort of assuage a lot of concerns in the community. And this is where that change is going to be mostly felt and borne out. The reason that it looks as though there will be a decrease is because the enormity of the change in property assessment value within that general assessment changeover kind of turned the formula kind of on its head because of the difference in the taxation amount that we need versus the value of assessments in the community. The assessment value is so drastically high, the formula, you end up with a tiny sort of mill rate application percent, and it actually works out in our favor. And this all sort of goes part and parcel with, the messaging that we were trying to enact at the time that the assessment roll came out. And we're trying to explain that assessment values don't equal tax values, and there's a...
This goes out, if the public sees any of these tables, and they see, residential minus 948, so my taxes are going down, they're immediately gonna, there's nothing that makes that clear, I don't think, to people that aren't accountants. The average Joe who lives at home, and they're gonna look at that and think that they're getting a discount this year. I don't want us to set ourselves up to fail. It's in the communications, not the problem with the math.
Sure, yeah. If the members of council are agreeable, I would love some feedback on how better to consume. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, first I think we should stick with scenario 1.
Yes.
For all of these reasons that we're hearing here, and just to keep the communications as simple as possible. It's like we're changing one thing, right? We're keeping the balance the same way, but we have a new assessment, right? And so for the communication side of things, you can be, here's the median residential house value. Yeah. This is what it was for taxation under the previous assessments. right? And now that median, that house hasn't changed, but the median assessment has changed because of the updated assessment. And this is now what the taxation looks like based on this, this budget, this mill rate. And I think that would be a little bit easier than the table here, or included in the table, right?
Absolutely. And thank you, Councilor Bathe. I think that kind of phrase would be incredibly effective, and I'm super grateful that you volunteered it. And I will definitely be applying it towards the very talented Ravina and Daniel for some social media messaging. The creativity side is not where anybody wants me to be.
Right.
So, but yes, that language, very grateful. Thank you so much.
Is it, I know, just even looking at my own, like, I'm not sure how I fit into this, right? Like, oh, it's gonna be $900 cheaper than thinking about, well, probably not, right? So being able to see where you fall against that median one before would help you, help the average public be able to understand what's coming.
In recent weeks, in anticipation of rollout of the new garbage program, we've enacted a couple of different attempts to ensure that communications are extremely thorough and cover all bases. And part of that was the enactment of a program-specific website. If there is opinion shared among council that something to that degree, some info sharing where there could be a dedicated landing space, we can certainly also enact something like that too. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else?
Totally different subject, but on the same thing at these stuff here, but we did talk at some point, and I read your notes on properties that you gave us separately for the last meeting, but how are we all comfortable, I guess I'm gonna ask everybody, is addressing vacant lots and decrepit lots, and some of them are gonna be through bylaws, some of them can be through this, I thought. Like, do we charge a vacant lot instead of 5.536? Do we make it so that a vacant lot pays more or not? Is that something we were considering? I thought it was discussed amongst us. I just need to know that we're all okay.
I just have some feedback. I can hand the chair to someone else. Sandra might be able to speak to this too. But we have to create some more bylaws or some sort of policy about that, because to ask our bylaws to go around and be subjective about what is derelict, what is this, what is that, it's not black and white, and we need to find parameters to say this is.
That part I got. It's more the vacant versus undeveloped versus, like, we say that right in here, like, surely to God we can tell what an undeveloped lot is. Like, we need bylaw to do a bylaw for that. Like, an undeveloped lot has no development on it. Pretty easy, isn't it?
Can I mind if I jump in? For these property classes as they were dictated by Becca, residential vacant, it speaks entirely to development or not whether or not there is a home with no one in it. It speaks to the development on that lot, which is the same for commercial. For industrial, institutional, and country, undeveloped speaks to that lot's not even cleared, there has been no prep. So there would be no, in this listing of class types, there would be no availability to enact any kind of weighing of property appearance, property approach. However, I did meet with Director McNabb to discuss the issue of derelict properties that came up last year, and the information that was provided to me is that it would require a certain level of expertise in the way of building inspections and things. If we tied it to the municipal taxation scheme, what would have to happen is that every year we would be obligated to commit to doing a full municipal taxation assessment to ensure that we have identified any new derelict properties, that any ones that were identified as derelict in previous taxation years. All that would need to happen in line with the existing deadlines in the taxation, in the sort of budgetary taxation mill rate sort of workflow process that happens between the end of December and now. Go ahead.
Wait, just wait, let her finish first.
No, I am.
And so
I don't need to hear you.
that would be an enormously administratively burdensome process to enact at a time when we are already in a very dense process workflow, creating a budget followed by dealing with the assessments of the properties, and then, like I said, enacting a mill rate. It's also been reflected to me that in order to monopolize a member of the Lands Division of the Protective Services Department, we would have to hire somebody to another full-time degree. Our bylaw officers would not have the available time annually to dedicate to a process like that. And if it was tied to taxation and we weren't then able to enact those inspections, our taxation process would be artificially halted entirely just by processing. So under SAO HUD, it was his advice as well that it should not be attached to the municipal taxation scheme and instead be subject to a fine structure under the striking of a novel bylaw to that effect. The only problem with that, and my understanding is that there was language struck to that effect last year, but there was no means of landing on finalized language that didn't have lingering loopholes. Designating a property as derelict based entirely just on the exterior appearance becomes wrought with problems to do with proving things to that effect, and a lot of times you have to rely on the availability of safety legislation instead, and so it would become an enormous undertaking. My understanding as well, and I don't want to put words into the mouth of anybody in the Protective Services Department, but it was reflected to me as well that the number of derelict properties around the community is quite likely less than 2 dozen, as just based on top of the dome, making a judgment, and so it was also proposed that the unsightly properties bylaw be amended to include some more severe language to the effect of properties that are showing wear and tear beyond what could be considered cosmetic or aesthetic.
So, take derelict out of the discussion entirely, that's not what I'm talking about. It's greatest explanation, now I'm asking. The empty properties that people have bought that are just sitting around town, not developed, still got trees on them, they're not fire smarted, whole areas of Field Street, all those areas where people have bought properties, not derelict building, they're just naturally sitting there, becoming fire hazards. I would call by this undeveloped. We, at some point, I thought had talked about making that weighting a bit stronger on those properties to encourage people to develop them. I don't know if we've ever had that discussion fully yet, but I'm just looking around the table saying, am I remembering something wrong here? But I do seem to remember having those discussions.
Correct. Councillor Bates?
Yeah, I just, following up on that, is we did have part of the housing needs assessment, and going way back with the Sustainable Development Board, there was reports saying that, we should enact something, and that's kind of where all this conversation started. And when we talked to Director Hood at the time, last year, this conversation was brought up, and basically he said that, the mill rate was so low, or the taxation was so low on those that even like 1,000% increase would essentially mean a couple dollars here or there. It's not enough of a stick to make a change. I still believe that even a little stick is something, right? So I'd be interested to hear if that's possible.
That's all I'm asking.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, well, I'm concerned because there is no category for residential undeveloped. There's residential vacant. I have an extra lot behind my house. There's small lots in my neighborhood. It's my backyard. It's cleared. It's fire smarted. It's fenced in. It's maintained. There are, a fire pit structure, but it would go up because it's considered vacant. So I see a difference between vacant and undeveloped, and unfortunately there doesn't seem to be a residential undeveloped, which might be just the tree lots that are accumulating fuel and everything else. So that's my concern around that discussion.
Thank you, good point.
Your worship,
Yeah, for sure.
just for clarity, could I have some clarity on my understanding was that vacant and undeveloped are the same. They're not?
Yes, vacant is a term that they apply to residential properties, and it just speaks to a lack of development on the property.
So they are the same.
They are, yes. And so when we say vacant, we don't mean that there's an existing structure with no one living there. We mean there's nothing on the land, vacant of any development. If there is a structure with nobody living there, they are still absolutely obligated to the residential property tax per normal. If nobody owns that, we do have a couple of properties in the community that are under the care of the GNWT. Those taxes are reflected to them instead. If there are properties in the community that have been designated as abandoned, my understanding is that our lands division is pretty quick to enact methodology towards sort of having that handled. But I will say that for properties that are still treed, but are, are under the ownership of a member of the community. That speaks to, that they are under the obligation of the bylaw to do with unsightly properties as well. The unsightly properties bylaw also speaks to fire hazard. So if you do own a vacant lot, undeveloped, you are still a property owner in the community and are still subject to that bylaw. And if your property is overgrown, presenting a fire risk, you are obligated under that bylaw and could be faced with a fine to that effect, requesting that you ensure that your lot is fire safe.
Councillor Cox, did you?
Yeah, I think I agree with Adam in terms of the scenario one, just because there's enough stuff changing this year that to throw something else into the weeds to try and explain to the public is going to complicate things. I think the other thing is in terms of the bylaw versus taxation. Next year, after the levels have standardized, I wouldn't be opposed to looking more at putting a bit more of a pressure on the vacant lots. But again, vacant versus derelict is very different. And derelict properties are our issue more than vacant properties, I think. And on that, I believe we still have unsightly land / should be public safety bylaw is in the works being redone. So that gives the potential to address some of those concerns. And the other thing is, I think as a community, we're still pretty green in terms of fire smarting and getting caught up on a lot of things, right? Really, we now have a strong protective services division that is getting caught up on process, and they're still catching up on years of neglect. So I think we're making headway on that side of things. So I don't think we need to muddle with it this year anyway. I think we got lots of did I have anything else? Yeah, no, I think I said all that I needed to say.
All right, thanks.
If it is the will of council to have us enact a notation to bring forward an option to that effect next year, we can certainly make note of that for our own reminder.
Fantastic. Yeah. Is there any other oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Fenn.
Well, I was going to, seeing that if there isn't any other, I'd like to recommend we amend our motion.
Okay.
Well,
just wait. Before we do that, does anyone else who hasn't spoke have something to say in regards to, I think we're leaning towards scenario one?
Yeah, no problem with the scenarios.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
So that we amend the motion to accept scenario one as outlined in the briefing note for the 2026 mill rate bylaw.
For sure. So Councillor Cox, you move that? Would you made the move to this motion that we're talking about? You agree to the amendment?
Yep.
Councillor Corbett, you second that? So you agree to the, obviously, that,
Your amendment.
to the amendment? Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor then. Do you want me to reread out the statement or you've got what we're doing? You got what we're doing, okay.
Michael, didn't you say we had to read out the rates or something in the bylaw? No.
I know previously we used to.
He said that last meeting.
We don't have to read out the, well, we could if you want to.
I don't want to, he just said we had to.
Oh, well, go ahead.
Your worship, through you to council, is that it's my understanding that probably halfway through last year you went to the process of just reading out approved by title.
Yeah.
Sounds like previously that's why you might have been reading them out in detail. So it sounds like you can simply read out by title. Approve.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so everyone all in favor? Okay, then it is passed unanimously. So that was the first reading? So,
No, that was the briefing.
that was the briefing one. Okay, so now we have to do, because we have quorum, we can do all 3 readings of tonight. So if I can have folks move the 2026 mill rate bylaw, 1084. Councillor Cox will move that.
I'll move that the 2026 mill rate bylaw number 1084 be given first reading by title only.
And second by Councillor Cruvet. Okay, I'll look over here next time, so I won't be looking over there. All in favor? Perfect, passed unanimously. Okay, the second reading, moved by Councillor Babe.
I move that the 2026 mill rate bylaw number 1084 be given second reading by title only.
Perfect. Second by Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Okay. Perfect. Third reading. All right.
I move that the 2026 mill rate bylaw number 1084 be given third and final reading by title.
Thank you. Second by Councillor Kershak. All in favor? Fantastic. Passed unanimously. Woohoo, folks. Okay. So we have we don't have proclamations
This time.
for this evening. The date of the next council meeting is regular meeting of council. It's the Community and Municipal Services. Councillor Cox will be chairing that meeting, and it's May 19th, 2026 at 7 p.m. The following meeting is June 26th, 2026 at 7 p.m. of the regular meeting of council for Project. So what did I say?
26,
Oh, just a second. 2026.
for the record.
Yeah, thank you. And do we have someone want to?
That was Councillor Tucky.
Oh, it was you? Okay, for sure. Councillor Tucky is